So this lender may not even know that. And the key to the Civil War is understanding that the problems of war finance. Okay, what's the problem of war finance? The government is fighting a foe, and it needs to mobilize as many resources as it can in order to win the war. Okay? In this case, the North was fighting the South. It was a civil war. Okay? But the finance problems are the same. Okay? You've got to mobilize resources. Okay? So what do governments do? Okay? They tax. They raise taxes as much as they can, raise as much money in taxes. Other resources, they actually have conscription. They say, you have to give me your labor, okay, for free. You know, you're a soldier, and fight in the war. So they sort of require people to give them money and labor. Okay, governments do that. Then they ask for some volunteers. They say, how about we sell you some bonds? Okay. And so let's start with that, okay, and that's the next. So let's say bond sales. How do bond sales work? Okay, so here we have the government. Okay, here we have the private sector. And here we have the banking system. When the government sells bonds, what is it trying to do? It's trying to say, issue some bonds as a liability, okay, and sell them, receiving in return deposit accounts. And I'm saying deposits, comma, G, that is to the credit of, that it can then spend on war goods. Okay? That's what it means to sell bonds. It means that you get deposit accounts here. So it's selling these bonds to the private sector, which is paying with its own deposit accounts. And I'm saying private sector because that's its deposits, and it's acquiring these bonds. Okay, so it's trading. You can have my deposit accounts, I'll take your bonds. Okay, and in the banking system, all that's happening is you have a debit to the deposit account of the private sector and a credit to the deposit account of the government. So you're just within the banking system, there's just a transfer of ownership of a deposit account. Okay, this is all easy peasy, but we start easy and then it gets more convoluted. Okay? Notice that the total quantity of deposits in the banking system doesn't change. You're just changing the ownership of some deposits. Then the government spends these, and in doing so, it's buying war goods from the private sector. So it's transferring these deposits back to the private sector, okay, and using them to buy war goods. So that's a good thing. It's war finance, right? You're trying to get more resources. If the government can sell bonds, so good. Okay. But if the government can't sell bonds, or is worried that the private sector is going to require way too much interest or something like that, okay, then instead of trying to sell them to the private sector, okay, it might sell them directly to the banking system, okay, or by taking out a loan from the banking system, like this. So let's say this is version 1, this is version 2, okay, plus deposits, plus bonds. Well, here we'll say a loan instead, okay? But a loan is sort of like a bond. It's a promise to pay at some future date, but it's not a security. It's not something that's saleable in the open capital market, and it's just borrowing this directly from the banking system. And this is a swap of IOUs, right? Why do I say that? The bank is saying to the government, I owe you, let's put some actual numbers there, $150 million, because this is exactly what Salmon P. Chase did, okay, in August of 1861. August of 1861, he went to the big New York bankers and he said, please lend me some money. They said, $150 million? Does that about do it? Yeah, that's fine. So he had this loan of $150 million. So they created a deposit account for the government, for Mr. Salmon P. Chase, saying, I owe you $150 million. Okay? And the government wrote a little note here saying, no, I owe you $150 million. Okay? The government owes in 10 years or 5 years. I don't think Young tells us the term of the loan. Okay? But this is a demand deposit. Okay? This is private money. Okay? And it's been created from thin air, if you see. It's an expansion of both sides of the balance sheet. You might call this quantitative easing. Okay? The banking system is buying the government bonds. It's buying the government bonds because the government is not so sure it can get the private sector to buy them. There's no involvement of the private sector here at all, right? In this second maneuver, okay, it's all completely a relationship between the banking system and the government. There is no central bank. Remember, this is before the central. This is Civil War. This is 1861. Okay. This is what Salmon P. Chase did, and then he pulled a bit of a fast one on the banking system. Okay, on these New York bankers, instead of taking these deposits and transferring them to Americans to buy war material, you know, boots and cloth and food for the soldiers and stuff, okay, he withdrew them. He said, oh, these are my deposits. You promised to pay me on demand. Okay, I demand. Give me $150 million. Give me $150 million in gold, please. In gold, please. I haven't put this in the banking system, but there are gold reserves, okay, that are being held by the banking system. And so the New York banks had to do that. And they did do that. Okay? Minus gold, minus deposits. Okay? Minus deposits plus gold. $150 million worth. Okay? Now, why did Salmon P. Chase did that? He did that because he wanted to be able to buy $150 million worth of stuff from abroad, from foreigners. Okay? They're not interested in dollars, they're interested in gold. And so he wanted to, at the very beginning of the war, make sure that all the gold in the United States was in his pocket. Okay? So that he could buy whatever he wanted from England. And this turned out to be rather key, actually, to the success of the war. The South had to always do barter deals, actually, in terms of with cotton. It would ship cotton and get war material from Europe. Okay, whereas the North could pay in gold. So this was a key thing. Okay. However, one consequence of this was to suck all of the gold reserves out of the banking system and therefore make them illiquid, make them unable to pay any other deposits in gold. Okay, and so they immediately suspended their specie payments. They refused to pay deposit accounts in gold anymore. The government took all the gold. They didn't have any more gold, so the U.S. went off the gold standard, right there, right at that moment, because Mr. Salmon P. Chase sucked all the gold into his own pockets.